Good morning to everybody, or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Wilfred Mijnhardt, and I am moderator of the session today for the Prime SIP reporting update. And I will share my screen with you. And one moment, I will upload it. I hope you can all see this. This is session 3 about future-proofing the Prime SIP reporting rationale. Support collective transformative impact. And this is important because transformative impact is a core theme of our thing. Today we have 4 presenters, in fact 3 because I only moderate my team. It's Divya Singhal from the Goulven Institute of Management in India, Katell Goulven, Executive Director of the Global Institute, Hoffmann Global Institute at INSEAD, Dilip Mirchandani, Professor of Management. My 3 colleagues are members of the subcommittee, and they represent the subcommittee in our session today. So what will we do? First, I will give a few minutes on the definition of transformative impact. That gives a bit of a bottom into the discussion. Then we go into 3 questions, and each of my colleagues will go through each of the questions. We'll do 1 question, 3 comments, 2 questions, and 3 questions, all 3 comments. And we invite you as participants of our session to give as much input also as possible through the chat, which is very valuable for us in the deliberations for the new SIP reporting platform that we are designing. And at the end of the session, I will give a few minutes on what the concept of what we call the Prime Commons platform will look like. We have a basic design we would like to share with you, and where we also received some news funding for news that we really like to share with you. So let's go into the first one. What is transformative impact? Let me share this with you. There's 2 types of impact as we see it. On the bottom, you see transactional impact. It's often impact on business, what businesses do. For example, you have a client who has a business model, and you try to optimize the supply chain, you try to optimize his revenues and so on. That's whatnot. That's transactional impact. But if you move to transformative impact, you help companies and other organizations, society, to change how they do the things they do. For example, if a company transitions from an analog business model to a fully digital or social business model, that's a complete transformation of the earning model of the company. That's a transformative change. And that's a different type of impact that we call the how impact. But also how we report on impact is different. If you look at what we do, often we tell news stories, anecdotes of individual projects. We don't tell so much the systemic narrative. So what in fact is happening a lot is that what we produce is what we call incremental impact. Incremental impact is on the what dimension, individual anecdotes, and there's thousands of them. We all do it. My school does the same. We all do it. But there's more. Next to this incremental impact, we can move to a more strategic dimension of impact. Intended impact, often mission-driven projects. And that's more like the long-term narrative that emerges. And what I think what the power of Prime SIP reporting can be is that we move from the current practice of incremental to a more long-term, strategic, transformative nature of impact, where we focus on what we really change in the world. And maybe that's currently 5% or 10% of our narratives, our stories. And I think having a good platform together helps us to move to this more strategic dimension of impact and throughout the entire Prime community. And this is our conception of what transformative impact is. Of course, there's nothing wrong with incremental impact. Only we add a layer of more fundamental change and transition that business schools can play as forces of positive change in the world. But this is our mindset, how we like to think of also the Prime reporting, that there's this multi-layered kind of impact that we can have on society. These are my first introductions. We go to the second part and we go into the 3 questions. Here are the 3 questions. Can you share illustrations of this transformative impact. Select from all the impact you do, what was transformative? How did you change the way business was done, or the community is organized? The second question is, how do you demonstrate that? What kind of indicator, what kind of metrics do you think are responsible metrics to underpin the narratives that we're telling about our impact? And the third question is, what would a new reporting logic look like? If we dream, not just a file server where we upload a PDF file, but how can we create something smart that helps us all in institutional development, social learning, and also creating a memory in the system? These are the three questions we will discuss. And we will start with the first question. Sorry, this is the next one already. Let's go. I will unshare my screen. I'll stop sharing my screen. Please, Dilip, can you start with the first question? How you think of that?
So transformation, I'd like to sort of expand a little bit on the concept of transformation. And as we know, as some of us know, that folk from the socio-ecological systems literature has linked transformation to resilience, and we use resilience a lot. And he talks about three capacities: the capacity to persist, to adapt, and to transform. And we understand persist, I think we understand adapt, but transformation is the most difficult because it requires to revisit our fundamental assumptions. And the thing is that what you do in transformation is linked to how you do transformation. And he has talked about the 7 keys to bringing that about, also from folk. And he's linked to the Stockholm Resilience Institute. There is a very good short film of 15 minutes that is worth viewing if you have the time to see it. And so he talks about diversity and redundancy. He talks about connectivity. He talks about managing slow variables and feedbacks, very important element, because systems theory tells us that cause and effect are separated in time and space. Adaptive systems thinking, I think that's self-explanatory. Encourage learning, really important. Transformation cannot happen without a dynamic learning system. Participation has to be broad. In other words, there have to be many voices in that mix. And finally, promote polycentric governance. So the idea that this pyramid structure will help us bring about transformation, I think he questions that idea. So I'll just leave it there with some ideas about how transformation comes about.
Thank you very much, Dilip. That gives more body to the thinking on transformative impact. Thank you so much. Divya, may I ask you, how this is in your context in India?
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Wilfred, for this question. And first of all, namaste to everyone. So for me and for us, I think transformational impact is the process of changing the way we do things and in order to have positive impact. So at my institute, GIM, we have a decade-old unique service learning program, which is titled as Give Goa, under which students work with NGOs, they work with business entity, government departments, self-help groups. And the whole idea is to apply the managerial learning to solve community problems and improve the lives of the people. For example, some students who had worked with the zonal agriculture office on soil mapping, they conducted workshops for local farmers, and the workshop was aimed at providing practical knowledge about how to use the results of soil mapping, soil testing, and in deciding what fertilizer and pesticides to use and what crops to grow. Now, students are helping raise the livelihood, and that's what I call transformation. Since its inception, more than 2,800 students have directly involved in creating social impact. And I think they have spent more than 3 lakh hours of service. All these projects were aligned to SDGs. So teaching and this service learning is one aspect. I also believe that research is an important aspect, but we need to ask some pertinent questions, some important questions. Are we doing research that is having real transformational impact? Or are we just doing academic research that is becoming increasingly irrelevant, that is very beautifully mentioned in the book by Andrew Hoffmann? I would recommend my PRME community, if you have not got a chance to read this book, please read this book, The Engaged Scholar, that raises some very important questions that talks about the expanding the impact of research. So we need relevant research that speaks beyond the silos of academia to policymakers, to NGOs, to business entities, and of course, general public. So that's how I define transformational impact.
That is wonderful, Divya. That is wonderful. It's so inclusive and so people-oriented also. I always love this narrative that you give. Katell, you are so active in the global scene, World Economic Forum, your institutes everywhere. You have such a nice narrative on transformation. Please share it with us.
Thanks, Wilfred. And just to build on what Divya was saying, I think for us, this transformative impact can really be triggered by everything that a business school does. And here, same thing, like Divya will give two examples from research and from teaching. From the research front, we have illustration of how research produced at INSEAD has changed legislation for positive impact on the planet. Which can sound a little bit remote, right? Thinking about some academics in a business school and the planet. And yet, decades of INSEAD research on circularity have been used to inform and help implement some very precise legislations, in particular on take back of electronics in the EU and in the US, basically by implementing some models that had been developed by researchers to try and show how to put the onus of the disposal of electronics, of their used products, back to the producer, right? So it's mechanisms and models that can really inform decision makers who are designing policies. That was done a few decades ago on electronics, but it can also now be applied to the take back of products that comes into that are part of the production process of renewable energies, for instance. And that's one of the conversation we brought to Davos last week, when there is acceleration of uptake for renewable energies by decision makers as we try to implement the transition towards a green economy. We need to think of what's going to happen with these products that we are producing and making sure we have the legislation and the systems that are circular so that we don't hurt the planet while trying to solve the climate issue. So that's one concrete illustration on the research front. On the teaching front, exactly like Divya says, we also try to make sure that our students are not just given the managerial toolbox, but also the practice to implement this toolbox in a way that consider their impact on society. For instance, we have the INSEAD Master Strategies Day every day, during which more than 500 students on the 2 campuses will apply that toolbox of strategy to a real problem, a life case of an NGO, trying to see how they can bring different ideas, different business model to an NGO to increase its impact. And that's been applied for NGO working on increasing access to healthcare services in South Africa, all the way to improving marine biodiversity in Cape Verde, for instance. Then some of the students will work with the NGO to implement these solutions. So we can do that with our students. We can do that in the classroom. And I guess it's our responsibility to equip them that way.
This is also, again, a wonderful story of how integrative, transformative action, in fact, is. It is about your students, it is about your faculty, it is about corporate relations you have, and all these sources of change, of power for change. If they combine, it can be really, really powerful together. I can't hold myself back to also give one example of Rotterdam. You know that the Netherlands is famous for a flower business. Tulips, cut flowers, and plants. This is a huge industry in the Netherlands. And my school has a long-term relationship with the flower auctions in the Netherlands. And that is a whole business system in itself. It used to be an analog business with auctions, with a few farmers and a few sellers. But now it's a global business, fully electronically, where everybody in the world can buy flowers and sell flowers. But also the supply chains have changed. The whole environmental dimension of how we use energy has changed. The algorithms of the market have changed. And my school have been in relationship with this flower business for so many years, helping this over the long term. change and become more competitive through transformation, responsible transformation. And that's an institutional narrative of my school, not just one researcher. This is generations of researchers from different fields, all contributing to this industry. And this is the kind of larger, say, stories that I think we should codify. Also in the SIP report, where education, research, and engagement together create the change. This is how I want to like to close up the first question. And I hope that you found the illustrations that we provided from our own context useful and inspiring. I would like to go to the second question, which is about the dream about the way how we measure it, how we demonstrate impact through indicators. And that's, again, a challenge in itself, a strategic challenge. Let me start the other way around in the circle now and give Katell the first word to see how you in the Hoffmann Institute think of indicators and metrics of impact success.
Yeah, thank you, Wilfred. And again, many schools are exploring that space, and we definitely do not have the Holy Grail. I think what's important is that if we can all share our practices and what's working and what's not working, so that we can learn from one another. And I think that that's the spirit of this work which we're trying to do in the SIP Impact Committee. So I think what's important here in terms of indicators is that they are reflective of not just at the activity, but they also make explicit the theory of change that we have. That should really try to indicate how management education can bring that transformative change we are talking about. So I think the indicators should cover everything that a business school does. They should indicate the intentionality of the school by looking the extent to which this transformative objective is integrated in the mission of the school. Then the indicators should also help us understand the extent to which research is also responsible research. Same for teaching, the external engagement of the school, and finally its own operation, how the school walks the talk. And in the context of the exercise under the committee, together with Jim Wolf from the University of Michigan, we've looked at how to revise this framework of indicators, really with that logic of execution in mind, to capture what the school does from all the way from its values to the way it walks the talks. And so I think what's important is that these indicators cover all this: values, purpose, teaching, research, external engagement, and operations. Then, of course, we can discuss specifics, but from our perspective and my perspective, it's less important to discuss specifics and to make sure we cover all that ground, so that we can capture the extent to which a school is really embedding responsibility at the core of its business model.
Well, I really appreciate, and I'm inspired by the fundamental way that you approach and frame metrics as a core element in the business, something out of the business, but it is in the core of the business, of the identity of the business school. Thank you so much for sharing that insight and all the work you do with Jim also in the SIP committee to help us define what really is measurable and how we can realize this. Next is Divya again. I go the other way around in the circle, as you noticed.
Sure.
What's your view on the metrics here, the indicators?
Thank you, Professor Wilfred, for this question. And first of all, thank you, Katell, for beautifully narrating that intentionality is very important. And I think I completely agree with you. For me personally, and for us as an institute, the most important is walking the talk. So, for example, if we are creating awareness about environmental issues and raising concerns over increasing carbon footprints, we need to first assess what are we doing to reduce carbon footprint. I'm really happy to be part of an institution that really walks the talk. So our organizational practices conveys our values. So like Katell, you were mentioning about what are our organizational practices? Are we really talking about the solar power energy plant? Are we doing rainwater harvesting, real-time energy management system? Do we have waste management? Do we have sensor-based lightings? So these are some of the environmental sustainability related aspects. or indicators. Social sustainability front also, in my institute, we have consciously created new job opportunities in the local neighborhood. We have stayed consistent and committed with our mission, and I think that's very important indicator. Where the student community, student body recognize our commitment with society or not, that's important indicator. Whether the school has mechanism to promote gender equality, whether you have plurality in education, whether you have mechanism which actually, again, Katell, earlier you were mentioning about the research which promotes the collaborative research, which promotes the applied research. Do you have commitment to agenda 2030? So these are some of the things which actually talks about, and these are the indicators which really tells us the transformative impact.
Thank you so much, Divya. Again, a demonstration that impact is about organizing your school. It is about creating a theory of change. It is connecting that to a proper mission. And then indicators without a theory of change are in fact blind. They're meaningless. So the meaningfulness comes from the joint theory of change. The mechanisms of which we create this, like the student body, like the thought leadership, all these mechanisms that we have, the indicators only have meaningfulness in that context. And I hope that Dilip can add some more to this metrics wisdom that we have.
Sure. So for those of us who are in business schools and teach in business schools and are faculty, there's good news and bad news, right? So let's start with the bad news is that we feel like everything is already being measured, and there are many metrics we do because there's regional accreditations and national accreditations and global accreditations like AACSB. And then we roll eyes and say one more, but this couldn't be more important. Now, the good news is that it dovetails with other things. Increasingly, AACSB Standard 9 has talked about these issues, and then you have the rankings that many schools are interested in that are also making this increasingly salient. And so the question is, what are we measuring and how are we measuring it? There are two kinds of measures. There's process measures and outcome measures. Now, some of our colleagues like Giselle have read thousands of reports over the years, and we have heard her reflect on and provide summaries of these things in the committee. And it seems that the bias has been toward process indicators. So, for example, a school might say, we have a committee that monitors the environmental impact of our operations. Fine. And that's good. But the school may not also at the same time provide information on what that observation says, like what's the trajectory of those indicators. And so it is challenging for us to think about what Divya said, walk the talk. I think a lot of schools tend to do a very good job with teaching, with enthusing their students, with motivating them, with research, trying to make the research responsible, relevant. But are they actually doing it themselves? And I think that's our next big challenge. And in fact, since we are on that topic, I'd like to turn it around to audience members, and I would ask you to use your comments and tell us some of one or two examples of indicators that you have used or have started using or plan to use in the near future that you think are really important for you to gauge, to calibrate, to carefully measure and track something that's really key for you.
Certainly.
So please
and
use
I hope
the comment box to provide those inputs. Thank you.
No, we hope that our participants in this session will indeed actively use the chat box to give that to us. I would like to add again one example of Rotterdam. 2 years ago, I did the BSIS impact study for RSM. And the value of that was that we rediscovered our regional footprint. We had over many years this international narrative of an international global business school and so on. And somehow along the way, we forgot about where we came from. And BSIS is a wonderful, method where you look into your regional impact dynamics. And one of the things that we discovered, what was we just didn't know, is that in the Randstad region in the west of the Netherlands, there are approximately 1,100 companies with 500 employees or more. That is the economic setting of that specific, larger company set. And we discovered by mapping the graduates database to the Chamber of Commerce database that 350 leadership positions of that 1,100 companies were covered by alumni of our school. So the ratio of leadership positions in a regional economic ecosystem is a wonderful indicator of how far you reach with your graduates and your alumni into the leadership of businesses. And that was just an indicator that is, it looks like small, but I think it is pretty big and pretty long term, that you see how much of our graduates are there. So thank you, Dilip, Katell, and Divya for this second question. I hope that the chat will also lift more of this. Let us move to the third question. And this is also a question that's in the core of the purpose of the SIP reporting committee. How can we dream of a new way of reporting for prime programs? A platform that also facilitates collaboration, inclusivity, and institutional learning. And that is a process we're in already for 15 months with our entire team. And we are moving towards a design of this. And I would like to some reflection, and this time I start with Divya. I think I'm doing it well, right? The turning. No, okay. So Divya, you start with the third question, how you look at it.
Sure. First of all, thank you for this question. Your question itself has 3 keywords: collaboration, inclusion, and institutional learning. So for me, this platform will look like a value add and a learning journey pathway, which is really built in open science, which will inspire creativity and learning. And of course, it will use that power of evidence-based strategic storytelling, where we would hear about how the school plan and implement their initiatives. And they are not just reporting what they are doing, but they're also reporting how they are doing. And that the SIP reports are more than simply listing of initiative. And I envision that kind of platform where it is useful for multiple stakeholders. So for example, as a researcher on modern slavery, if I want to know who all are doing research in this area, I can use the power of open science and search using keywords. And thus the SIP, talking about modern slavery research should pop up. And it will definitely help build newer collaboration and increase collective action. And I really like that Don Tapscott quote, which I want to present here. He says that collaboration is important, not just because it's a better way to learn. The spirit of collaboration is penetrating every institution and all of our lives. So, learning to collaborate is part of equipping yourself for effectiveness, problem solving, innovation, and lifelong learning in an ever changing networked economy. So, I want to envision that platform which is really equipped in this learning to collaborate, and really fantastic way of learning from each other, and really a growth mindset should pop up from that.
Thank you so much, Divya. This is a bit of a dream, right, that we're formulating here. And that's cool. So, Katell, what's your dream of the reporting platform?
So thanks, Wilfred, for that. So first, what I wanted to say to also make the transition between these two questions on the indicators, I feel that we get stuck also on the indicators and trying to find the perfect metric for everything that we do right now in terms of ranking and ratings. When responsible management is being taken into account, it's will focus on the percentage of core courses dedicated to sustainability, CR, ESG, however you want to call it, right? And sometimes there's going to be a bit of screening of research. But again, that doesn't capture what we talked about before, the transformative nature. So I think it's important to not get stuck on indicators and trying to perfect them too much, because I think that might kill the dream. So I just wanted to say that. At the end of the day, two things for me are super important. The first one is that management education is one aspect of this broader transformational change that we want, which is like education to change people, to change business, to change our society, and make sure we protect our environment so that our children can stay here. So the actual impact of people coming on our campus through their organization is what we want to capture, and that's very hard. At INSEAD, for instance, we've started doing an impact evaluation of our alumni. It's just based on whatever they report back on the survey, but we're trying to identify to what extent they identify themselves as impact leaders, because we know theory tells us that if they are impact leaders, they identify themselves as impact leaders, they're more likely to play that role. But this is still very far from really capturing our overall causality all the way to changing the world. So this is where we should put our brains to right now. And the second point I wanted to highlight, and the dream is that this platform help us do that. And the second one, again, is on collaboration, because we will not have system change if we don't all collaborate. If we don't all collaborate across our school, and if we don't collaborate as part of one player in the bigger system. And on this, I want to just make a plea for more collaboration across our schools. Climate change, inequalities, the depletion of nature, calls on us to rise above our typical competition lines, to really join forces and learn together on that journey. Modestly, at the European level, we've joined force with at INSEAD with other 8 business schools on climate change to try to do that, pull our knowledge together so that we provide it freely to all our alumni and our students. I really think collaboration is really the keyword of the day if we want to accelerate change. Thanks. So that's the second part of my dream.
Yeah, but it would be wonderful if the Prime platform could facilitate the collaboration efforts that you do in the network with business schools, and that it also is not only on a website somewhere, what you did, but that it's in a repository, and that there's a memory in the system, remembering what the success factors of this was, what you learned, and how you can inspire other school networks to do comparable things on climate leadership, for example, the thing I know you're passionate about, that you help other schools develop the capabilities through the Prime platform to do these things together. And that is not only an exclusive thing for a set of schools, but that it is an industry capability in the end. And I hope that the platform, you already started to do my dream, but Dilip is first.
So I'll get down to the brass tacks and the reality of what, because our title is Futureproofing the PRME SIP Reporting Rationale, right? So what do we do now? The dream comes into sharp focus when we compare to what we do now. And I've done it myself, and I know many of you have done it. A person is assigned the idea of writing an SIP report, and we sit down and write the SIP report. And there is this nice PDF document that is produced anywhere from 30 to 60 pages typically. And it tells the story about all the different things that have gone on within the school. And generally it is oriented toward the outside stakeholders. I'm not sure how many internal stakeholders actually read those things, but that's just my opinion. Now, this PDF sits somewhere, and maybe you read it, maybe you don't read it. So there is no way for this to be shared with the world other than this document that somebody has to read. Now, in a sense, it's periodic. It's every 2 years. We may spend 1 to 3 months writing it, and then it starts again after 2 years. That's the current situation. Now, imagine a dream where there is no need to do that, because instead of SIP reporting, it is SIP storytelling. It is a live, dynamic process. You document your journey as it happens. And when I say you, and now this is really important, inclusivity, it's not just you. It's not just the one person who was assigned to write the SIP report. It's all of the key stakeholders. They all get a chance to have their own voice on this collaborative process where you can hear these many voices and you can hear them come together. And oh, by the way, along the way, we will also see, and there's nothing wrong with seeing those things that didn't work out, because failure is a very good teacher. And so we need to be open and embrace the idea that we will try things out and they will not work, because we live in a challenging world with complex problems. In fact, I think we have wicked problems, and I can go on into wicked problems and what wicked problems are, but very quickly, a wicked problem is one when you apply the solution, the problem changes. So wicked problem is constantly moving. It's a moving target. And those are the kinds of problems we're dealing with right now in our world. So we should be open to embrace this openness, this transparency, and the sharing with each other in real time on a platform. And of course, we have a dream, and I think Wilfred will show you a graphic that will sort of try to sketch that dream out for us. And so I am very excited, we are very excited, and we hope this dream comes to fruition in the coming years.
Thank you, Dilip, especially also mentioning the whole openness and transparency and learning concept of it all. I will start sharing in the last 7 minutes of this session and feel a bit the design that we are designing here. One moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So what is what we call the Prime Commons platform? The Commons is not an exclusivity thing. It is based on inspiration from open science. Here is design, high-level design we've made for this. If you look at the green level first, this is a replacement of what we now have called, say, the file server where we all upload our PDF files. This is the self-reporting part of it. All 900 so many schools, they periodically upload content. But now you upload a PDF, but we are going to unbundle this more. Also that more stakeholders of schools are able to contribute. These are the purple input arrows on the bottom. So that is not only a one-time report that somebody makes in a room for 2 years, but there's much more users and co-producers of the same thing, but also maybe with what we call SIP plugin modules. There's all kinds of, say, tools that schools have developed so far, like the positive impact rating, like solid test, like SDG mapping. All schools have invented nice tools. So if we could use this platform to scale up the use of these tools to all the membership schools, then we can all use this evidence that comes from these tests to help our reporting become more transparent, more stakeholder-driven, and more data-driven. And that's layer one. But layer two is also very important. We don't have that now. We call it the repository level. And on layer two, on the right, you have data suppliers. And I will move to the next slide to explain this to you. Data suppliers, in the world of open science at the moment, they share all data. Like Research for Life is a global organization of publishers like Elsevier who share data towards the third world and other, say, users of knowledge. The UN Global Compact, Publisher Compact, institutional repositories, reporting agencies, and legacy data from publishers, for example, all the books that have been published in the last, say, 15 years on responsible
Wilfred, you have the wrong slide on there, I think. We're not seeing the slide that you're talking about.
Oh, that's strange. Is this the one you see? The one with the...
No, we are seeing the questions.
We're seeing 3 questions for all participants.
Strange. That is strange. One more.
There. That's not...
Yes.
Yeah,
now you see
now we see it.
Okay. And you didn't see it at all the time?
No.
Okay. Then I told about level 1. That's the green level. You can see it now?
Yes.
Level 2, the repository level, where we add data sources from sources on the right. Do you see this new slide too?
Yes.
Good. Here are organizations that deliver us data. In the middle is a curation layer where, based on the content of the schools, but also the other content that we import from other systems, we create a curation system on thematic progress on responsible management education. And we can also create new roles for faculty on curate, like you have editors in journals. You can have curators on this platform that are in fact dealing not with the new knowledge, but with the impact of the knowledge, so that we can develop thematic content. And that is for layer 3, where you have the narrative dimensions and the underpinning metrics there and the indicators based on the 2 levels below. And if we can not only share that on our own portal, but also on the left, create, say, distribution partnerships, like with platforms, stakeholder platforms, like World Business Council or the World Economic Forum or Global Compact, where thousands of companies are in a platform, If we can reach so many companies with content partnerships from the platform, probably we will reach impact in a new way. So this is our dream on building 3 layers of content and curation activity. And as was pronounced this morning by Mette, for the first layer, we have got a substantial endowment from the Foundation for Economics of Mutuality to help us through the first, say, 3 years of building this layer of a long-term platform. And we are currently also reaching out to multiple funding organizations to make this entire platform possible, so that we together create a global platform where for the long term, that's the global, say, place where responsible management education impact is codified, and where schools are in the lead of this collective narrative, where rankings might get data, where data might be used for accreditations also because it's trusted content. And together, this is the vision we have. And let me see the next one. I don't have to do additional materials. This is what we wanted to share with you as our say high level design we have now. We're very happy with the first funding. And yeah, this was our program for today. I think we have 1 minute left. Some extra comments by Dilip, Divya, or Katell on this?
No,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Katell.
I just, my final comment would be that I think we should all, we should be humble on like where we are now and the extent to which not only we can measure the actual impact that we can have, and also humble vis-a-vis all the work we still have to do. And then I also think that it's important for all of us to be courageous, because even if it sounds complicated, and transforming academia is extremely complicated, I think that the impact can really be major. So that's all I wanted to share.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Katell. I think those are wonderful words. Also, you feel the energy in the SIP committee of our members, how we are dedicated to this change, what kind of knowledge we try to bring to the table to make it happen, and also the funders we are acquiring now. And I hope this gives you inspiration and also hope for a nice result we will build over the next period. Thank you so much for participating in this session. We are in time. I think it is nicely 45 minutes now. Thank you so much for participating.